Welcome to Make That Paper, the show where we talk about all the crazy jobs we do to make the cash we need to pursue our artistic dreams.
And for custom sweaters for your Italian Greyhound, because desert nights get chilly.
That's right. Today we are rapping about the Junk Mail Jamboree, the Puppet Wrangling Roadshow, and also the celebrity impression profession. We are your hosts, Jamie Parker Stickle
and Jason Bieber.
And today we are chatting with one of Hollywood's busiest and most talented visual artists and puppeteers.
He's designed puppets for the Jimmy Kimmel Show, Glee, music videos for Trace Atkins, Kid Cudi, and Ed Sheeran, among others, as well as many national commercial campaigns.
He is also the co-writer and puppet designer for the original musical Alien versus Musical.
And he's an incredibly nice guy, and we are so lucky to have him here.
Please welcome to the show the insanely talented and inspiring Steve Troop.
Yeah.
Thank you. You forgot dog sitter.
And dog sitter.
And dog sitter. But that's going to come in later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
But yeah, incredible dog sitter. How do we get you back?
I don't know. I need a dog sitter myself. So it's kind of.
Well, that turns into a dog swap situation.
Yeah.
Dog swap. Yeah. Did we try to dog swap one time before? Or was that a house swap?
It was a key party, Jamie.
Oh, right. What's a key party? Never mind. I don't want to know. So Steve and I go way back. So every time I see Steve, I'm like, how do you not change? It's been like, we've known each other for 15 years.
Well, let me think.
2005.
Yeah.
17 years.
17 years.
We studied at Groundlings together.
That's right.
It's
the only acting training I ever had. So.
But if I recall a class, you were like, we had some hardcore teachers. Groundlings, I think, was a little different 17 years ago. And we had some hardcore teachers. And at one point, Steve, I think you kept, if I recall this correctly, I'm probably making some of it in my head because it was a moment. You were like, I'm a puppeteer, man. Can I do some puppeteering? And the guy was like, you're a what? And you're like, yeah. I'm a puppeteer. I'm here for puppeteering. It was one of those, I don't even think you meant to be Midwest passive aggressive or like say it in his face, but we had some teachers that were a little bit like.
Our first teacher was amazing. Brian Palermo was amazing.
Amazing.
And then it was kind of downhill from there.
Yeah. And Steve was just like my hero in that class. It was funny. He's like, really? You can't talk to me like that, buddy. No, that's how it sounded in my head when you were like, I'm a puppeteer, man.
Well, I think we were sitting alphabetically originally. And so Stickle and Troop were right next to each other. And so that's how we ended up meeting each other is just because of the alphabet. So
yeah,
there you go.
It was great.
Thank God for linguistics.
There you go.
Putting us all together.
And we've been friends ever since. I mean, I think we switched emails from AOL to Gmail together. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey. So happy for both of you.
This is so funny. But yeah, listen, Steve has done so many jobs, and every time we talk over the years, like a year or two will go by, and then we're like, what's going on, man? And Steve's like, you don't want to know. I'm in Northridge and I'm doing direct mailers. And I just want to talk about it because Steve is one of the most talented people I know, but has had to hustle because, like so many in this business in Hollywood, they want your talent and abilities and they don't want to pay for it.
Well, my favorite one was I was working for I was doing gags for a comic. I was a animated cartoon, and I was actually storyboarding and coming up with gags and writing. And the project was coming in, and they were like, "What are you doing next?" I'm like, "Well, I'm supposed to go make boxes for a box company." And the guy says, with Phil Niblink, who was the head storyboard artist on that, he goes, "I want to cry."
Yeah. He wants to cry because he's been there and he knows.
Yeah, and he looks at you, and you're an incredible artist. Like, your talent is ridiculous, and it's just one of those things where it's like you could be prepared, and you could be not just prepared, but like done all the work, have all the talent, you're ready for it, and then the opportunity just doesn't present itself, right? Like the doors aren't open to let you in, and you're like knocking on all of them, and then you're like, I'm gonna go build boxes. Let's do it.
Right. I mean, you need your health insurance, you need your
whatever.
I'm going to say one thing that you've got going for you that we as actors don't necessarily is that we can do all the same preparation and be ready. And then, opportunity comes and they go, oh, you're too tall. Your hair's not long enough, too long, whatever. And you can just switch to a different puppet.
True. But also, like, I also build my own wardrobe and my own, it's like all the stuff that, like when I usually puppeteer, I'm also building the puppet as well. So there's that skill set too. And I always talk about how I was, I wanted to be a cartoonist. That was all I wanted to do was be a newspaper cartoonist. And I've drawn more as a puppeteer than I ever did as a cartoonist.
As you design them.
Yeah. I've very rarely been paid as a cartime.
You're kidding. That's crazy. I feel like you would get paid more for that than puppeteering.
I know. I just have never been able to break into it. I've applied and and everything else and tried to run through the channels, but I mean, guys, I've sent off hundreds of submissions to the different syndicates of trying to get the newspaper back in the day. Newspapers kind of went away. That was kind of the problem. But but even on top of that, I mean, it's so cutthroat. I think it's like 3,000 to 6,000 submissions a year, and they pick 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could submit to Highlights magazine and lie and say you're 12.
There you go. They
pick up comics from 12-year-olds.
Right. Yeah.
I only know this because I have a 7-year-old who reads it.
Right. Right. I remember Highlights.
It's so great. It's still so great. I steal it from him. Like that's one of our reading days is we get through the whole magazine. But it's interesting that you say that because there was a point in time where you, as a kid, you thought that you could, speaking from myself, that you would break right in, like everything you saw on TV was something that you felt like Chrissy on Three's Company. I was like, I'm going to be Chrissy on TV one day, right? Like you just associated yourself and then it all went away and it's different.
Well, it went away for Chrissy too.
Had a lifespan of about 5 years. No. Then she was the sheriff. I can remember being a senior in high school, and I think Charles Schultz was doing Peanuts, and I think he was around at the 35-year mark or the 40-year mark. And I remember reading that he'd started Peanuts when he was 26, and I thought, I'm 18. I bet you I could make it to 60 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And now we see like in this industry, well, in Hollywood industry, there are so many people coming up that don't get their break until close to 50. And it's like an overnight story. And you're
so there's still time.
There's still time. There's always time. I think like Gen X is seeing this breakthrough of like, we did what we were supposed to. We filled our coffer 401k and IRA, and now we're going to just do what we want to do. And if we run out of money when we're 80, F it.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna pivot. Gen X is really the group that has learned to pivot into, careers at different ages. And, we don't give a shit about the 30 under 30 or the 40 under 40. Like, fuck that shit. I was, like hustling my ass off. I don't need, like it's crazy that the dynamic has just shifted so much in a good way.
So much for sharing this with my parents.
Just kidding. Do they not like swearing?
No. I'm very much Mr. Rogers. I very rarely do as well. Yeah.
Well,
I could just throw a bunch of bleeps on this episode.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding you, but no,
you should bleep me a lot.
No.
I don't swear often, but because I have a 7-year-old, so really I let loose on the podcast.
She says that, but I just took our 7-year-old away for the weekend and he just swore like a sailor the whole time. I'm like, where is this coming from?
Did he say mom?
I knew. I didn't have to ask.
Well, listen, he and I have a deal. Like you can swear at home, but because we don't censor, but you may not swear in front of other people.
In church.
He's so smart. He's so smart and he knows, like he's very smart. I know I'm going to get a phone call home at some point though. Let's be honest. It's coming.
And just so you're aware, he swore in front of a lot of other people.
Who do you swear in front of?
Well, the other kids.
Oh, well, they swear too. I'm now worried about it.
I recorded all of it.
But the sweetest thing is, and we're off topic and we'll get back on. He asks me permission. Mom, I just feel like I need to say this swear word. Can I do it? And I'm like, sure, buddy. And then he'll do it for like 3 minutes. And then I'm like, I think it's time. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
It's really cute. Anyway, sorry. Both of you just made me feel bad. Let's talk about direct mail mailers, because Steve was doing this for so long when we were buds, and it was like the bane of your existence. You were like,
yeah.
baby,
Well,
I can't do this anymore. It was the scourge.
Well, I did it for DirecTV for 12 years.
Yes.
And
that was
I
you.
yeah. So I was thinking about this as I was getting ready. It was like, I might be your only guest that has personally put something in somebody else, every listener's house. I always like, I'm responsible for the logos at where I'm working now. And I keep track of them, make sure they're up to date, and I also make sure they print, and that's kind of my job.
Are you creating the logos also?
Oh no, I don't create anything. In fact, I purposely look for jobs that I don't have to do anything particularly creative at.
You and I both, like, this is what I was doing at Nestle. I was the same person you are at Nestle with the candy packaging.
Well, the thing is like I worked right out of high school. I worked as an animator, and for 10 months I didn't draw a single thing on my own. And that was kind of the idea, that was like, if I have a job, especially one like this, where my mind does tend to wander as I'm doing the work, and I have a little sketch pad next to me, I can come up with ideas and things all day long. I mean, this is how a lot of the time I've said get paid for my work, is because I actually can then take those ideas at night and do something with them.
Right.
And that was kind of my, and nobody's going to give me health insurance to sit there and draw it on a sketch pad all day. So that's kind of the workaround, but
Right.
But
so you were basically project manager,
well, I do production. So
quality assurance.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do. But I'll tell you one thing has helped is so many people who are puppeteers and cartoonists and everything else don't know how to print and don't know how to make their own books and their own marketing materials. And so learning that skill has helped me, and I've helped other people too. I used to have this deal with one cartoonist who didn't know how to lay out his own book, and so I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll do it for free, but you give me $1 for every one that you sell. And he sold 5,000 copies per. And so I'm like, I got 5,000. I did 3 of his books. And I was like, I got, $15,000 for this job that was basically a $200 job,
Wow.
so like,
great deal.
Knowing these people who don't have the money to pay for it. And I mean, really, they're charging $15 and they're printing it overseas. So they're getting 1,400 of that, $14 per book. So another $1 is not going to hurt them, but
you're
great
not taking
for me.
10% like an agent. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, I did that one for a while, and that was good. Although when I started doing my own artwork again, because I've gone through a lot of periods where I just don't draw anything or don't do anything. It's like I get fed up. And
let's talk about that, because I think that's important. Like, I think I know a woman who was like, you know what, I don't have any money, and I'm struggling right now. And like, she was honest about it on social media, and she was like, I'm taking some time off to just work, and I'm not going to be creative. I'm just gonna, like, people announce it to like hold themselves accountable to the fact that I think that I need a break from being everything all the time.
See, that was my problem, is I never announced it. I would just one day wake up and be like, yeah, I can't do it today. And then a week would go by, and it's like, nobody's noticed I haven't done it, so I can go off for another month. And then before I know it, it's 10 years or whatever. So
No,
yeah,
not 10 years.
Well, so when I was doing Alien versus Musical, I got overwhelmed. I was like doing all those puppets, and I was, helping write the story, and I was doing the whole thing. And I was doing a daily comic. I was doing Melonpool daily at that point, and the Sundays were in color. So I was doing this up until that point, 2015, 2006, 2015. And one day I was like, I can't do it. I got to stop it because this other thing is happening. And I never went back to it. And I was like, okay, I'm actually a lot happier not doing it. like drawing a daily comic is a 30-hour job just on itself, if you don't, even without the thinking part of it. And so, and I'll tell you, when I'm around people, it's like, I'll sit there, and I remember hearing about Charles Schultz's wife, and we'd be driving along in the car, and I'd look over and I think, I wonder what he's thinking. I'm like, wait, I know what he's thinking. He's thinking about that comic. And that's totally true, because it's like, you're looking for that next gag. You're looking for the next thing that you can do with it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I didn't draw for 5 years. I didn't do anything. And I between that and going back to work doing direct mail, we decided as one of the things at work, they started doing that Inktober thing. It's actually going on now.
I love Inktober.
Yeah, so I
I don't do it, but I look at everybody else.
Right. So
But
how
for the idiot here, what is Inktober?
Inktober is, there's this guy, and I don't remember his name, but he does this list every year, and there's multiple lists to go around, but he does this official list of prompts. So it's like, gargoyle and, sleep, or, all these different like one word prompts.
Okay.
And every day you have to draw a little, like a drawing that's based on this prompt. I use it as a gag, like a way to use it for the gag. And I refuse to spend more than 2 or 3 minutes on it, because it's just like,
I was going to say, it's interesting to see people's interpretations of the prompt.
Right.
Some people are like, they use their charcoals and they're in depth and it's like so dimensional, and you're like, Jesus. And then some people are like really quick, and I don't know. It's interesting to see everybody's sort of different manifestation of his prompts.
Right. And one of them this last week was bat. Now I've done I did one. So I always use my dog, Tilly, an Italian Greyhound, basically. For the people not in the know. Now I have a Italian Greyhound, and she kind of ends up being the muse for these drawings. And I had done a couple strips with her being, the prompt was bat. So I'd done one with her with bat wings, and I did one with her with the cone of shame doing the bat signal over the years. And so this one I was like, what am I gonna do? So I put a baseball bat in her mouth and had a ball whizzing past her head. And I thought, well, that's, it's a tiny little dog with a bat. That's pretty funny. So, that sort of thing. But what happened was they were doing this at work, and the way that they did it was, okay, we're going to do it on work time, and all you have to use are office supplies and a Post-it note. Put it on a Post-it note, and we're going to put them on the wall. I was the only one that finished that year, or I think there was maybe one other person, but everybody just dropped off like flies after a while. But on the 5th one of those, I hadn't drawn for 5 years at that point. I was like, oh yeah, I used to do this. I used to do a daily strip, blah, blah, blah. And I started drawing, and on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th, somewhere around there, I did one of Tilly, and everybody we kept on me like, oh, that one of your dog is so funny. You should do more of those. And so for the rest of it, I just did Tilly cartoons. And then I've now done 3 books and maybe a 4th. I'm working on a 4th one now of these little cartoons. And I always used to say, I always wanted to be the next Bill Watterson, Calvin and Hobbes, but I turned into the next Brad Anderson, Marmaduke. Is kind of what I,
Well,
you never know where you're going to find your muse.
Yeah, well, Tilly has definitely become a muse. Everything is dogs these days, it seems. In fact, at work we have a dog channel, and people post pictures of their dogs, and if it's a funny dog, I'll just draw it real quick on a Post-it note and post it. So it's kind of become my thing, is to draw people's dogs on Post-it notes.
You keep saying at work. Where are you working right now? So
I'm working at a place called Kern, Kern.
Kern.
And they're an ad agency. They they don't like to be called junk mail, so they're direct mail. But
okay.
they're a step above the junk mail I used to do for DirecTV. So yeah.
So
targeted junk mail.
Are you doing the same role there as you were doing at DirecTV?
So it's funny. I started off doing production, which I'm not a big fan of production. It's basically just making sure commas are in the right place, and things will print, the colors are right, and the fonts are right.
That's what I did at Nestle.
And purchase, artist purchased. But I've moved in. I've gone into doing now logos. I basically check to make sure the logo. So basically, I say my life is exactly where it is, except for back in 2000. Let me think. 2006, I lived in Playa del Rey. I had a really cool Toyota Celica, and 2006
Toyota Celica.
No, it was actually a 1994 Celica, but it was I love that car. I still love that car. In fact, if I get a prompt about a Celica, it's anything to keep me from actually trying to buy it, because I love that car so much.
That's awesome.
But anyway, I had that car, I lived by the beach, and I worked at DirecTV, and I did logos. Right now, I'm living in the beach at the beach. So I got back to there. I'm handling logos for an ad agency, so I'm right there again. And I drive a horrible Civic, so it's like I want to get back to that Celica, and then I'll have my life that I had back in 2006.
Just try to close the loop.
Just trying
Right,
to,
right.
yeah, I'm
But
quantum
also-
leaping myself back into, yeah.
But you're also being creative full time. You were just at Dragon Con. Did I say
Yeah,
that right?
I was just at Gen Con and Dragon Con. I did.
Yeah.
I probably won't do two. They're a month apart, and I probably won't do two conventions month apart again, because the prep for those two conventions. Did I go dead?
Hear that? No.
What?
Did you hear my stomach?
No, I
Guys,
thought it was my mic.
it's my stomach. We're fasting because it's Yom Kippur. I'm just putting it out there for the audience. We're going to try to take that growl out, but just know it's.
If we're not at our best today, please understand it's for religious reasons.
And Steve is carrying us. He's carrying
I'm
us.
religiously eating Cheetos the whole time. So no.
Thank you for not doing that right now.
No,
I
I
have a
wouldn't.
bag in the cabinet that's calling my name.
Does it have like a glass and a little hammer? You
Mhm.
break it in case you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Use that sunset.
But yeah,
I would eat the broken glass at this point.
right. Well, I have fasted. It wasn't for religious reasons, but I did a cleanse, a yoga cleanse.
Oh yeah.
In fact, I might have known you when I was doing that. It was great. It was great, but I mean, I did pass out and knock my head on the bathroom wall at the time.
Is it one of the times? Well, I'm sorry. We have to get back to what you were telling us, but really quick, we can segue non sequiturs.
Yeah.
So Steve is a type 1 diabetic like my brother, and I do remember you fasting, and I do remember being very upset with you. There were a lot of times I was very upset with you. We'll all recall. Well, Steve and I will recall, because I was worried about his health. And then at one point he told me because insulin, for people who don't know, type 1 diabetics need insulin twice a day. It is so expensive, and if you don't have insurance, like, you can't afford it. And
so the difference is, if you have insurance, it's $200 a month.
Right.
If you don't have insurance, it's $1,800 a month. Just
and you
for your
take
insulin.
this twice a day to stay alive.
Well, yeah. So I take one insulin once a day, which is 30 units, which that lasts a month. And then I take every time I eat, I take units. That's the way mine works. Is every time I eat, I take the other insulin, and that'll last. The pack of 5 lasts a month. So for $1,800, that's what $1,800 will buy you in the non insurance field. Yeah.
Right. So at one point,
so yeah, here's the punchline right here.
Steve didn't have health insurance and was buying his insulin on Craigslist.
Right.
And I think Jason and I were together at this point, and I think I had like a total meltdown. I had a total fucking meltdown. Sorry, Steve's parents.
No.
I was so worried. I didn't even know what to say or do. Like it, and it's like, dude, that's my stomach.
Well, so
what does black market insulin go for?
Yeah.
$50.
$50, and that's how much insulin is that?
That's enough for about a month's worth. $50.
Okay, so 1,800 out of pocket, 200 through insurance, $50 on the black market. I see this as a no-brainer.
Yeah, but where is it coming from, and how are they able
to
sell
so
it
the
for
way it would
$50?
work is somebody would be over prescribed, and then he'd sell off the excess. So he might need 4 vials in a month, so he'd sell 2 of them, or so he'd get 6 and sell 2. I mean, when I have insurance, they send me way too more than I need. Not that I sell it on the black market, but
I feel like you owe the system.
That's true. Well, I tell you the joke that I would say is, like, I always thought I would die of diabetes, but I didn't think it'd be on a back alley drug deal.
Right.
Trying to get my insulin,
I think you said that to me, and I was like, Steve.
Yeah. Well, that was only I think I did that for about 8 months, and then I finally got back to work. So.
Yeah, because
But it was
layoffs
hard.
happen, work comes,
It was hard going from 4 years of trying to be a full-time puppeteer with no insurance to
mhm.
getting back into the direct marketing game. It was a little bit of a uphill. Well, so what's your most recent artwork? Well, I did this cartoon, I
Yeah.
drew this puppet, it's like, yeah, they want to see an ad or something. So
Right. Of course they do.
yeah. That's one of the greatest things about the place where I'm working now, is that they're really good about promoting people's side hustles and stuff. I mean, they
That's great.
have a weekly newsletter where they highlight things that people are doing that are interesting. I do a lot of I've been doing a lot of puppet slams, which are kind of like poetry slams, but there's little short puppetry things. And so I have one coming up.
Live events.
Live events, yeah, yeah. So I've done 3 different acts over and I guess I've done it about 6 or 8 times total. So I've doubled up the acts, done them at different venues and stuff. But I'm starting to think that that's kind of the way I write. It's very much like a comic strip. It's got a beginning, middle, and end that's really kind of compressed together.
Yeah.
And I usually go to these things, and this is really the only time I perform, in front of people, because usually I do TV video puppetry. And so I always treat it as like, okay, I'm gonna try and steal the show. I'm gonna try to, just dominate this. And so many people are like, oh, I'm doing this really artsy, puppet. Now the puppeteers love the artsy puppetry stuff. I'm killing the Mr. Rogers characters. That's what I,
Right.
it's like,
Right.
yeah. So,
You're the category of your own, Steve.
yeah, exactly.
And I'm a fan of it. Speaking of, okay, I'm going to jump backwards for a second. You're just a Celica shy of where you were in 2000.
Yeah. I'm making exactly the same money I was making in 2012. And I'm also don't have my Celica, and I'm living by the beach. So yeah, I'm
But you're
I'm
happier.
Yeah.
Like every time we talk, you're like,
Yes.
I am so happy. Because when you were living in LA,
I didn't have my dog. Didn't have my dog.
You didn't have your dog. You didn't have the insurance. You were
Yeah.
making back alley deals for insulin.
Yeah. So I mean, there is hope, everybody. No.
But in all honesty, you left. Okay, how did you leave DirecTV and get to Kern?
They left me. So they laid everybody off in 2012.
Oh,
And I took that money because I lived there. I worked there for 12 years, and I took my retirement, my 401k, and everything else, and I like, okay, I'm gonna live on this while I become a puppeteer. And so I had been working as a puppeteer for probably 6 years at that point, because I kind of do as a freelancer. And BJ Geyer, who's the puppeteer that I had met in LA, was about to close his shop. And I said, listen, I'm just getting started. I would love to, I can't buy the shop. I have no money, but I would love to take it over, because that's what he had done. He had taken over somebody else's shop. And then I can make you payments as I bring stuff in, because I think there's really a market out there, for this type of puppetry and blah, blah, blah. And he says, listen, I'm so burned out, but I'm so excited about how excited you are, that why don't we just get a shop together, and I can stay on it. So we did. We had a shop together for 4 years, and we had 3 jobs during that 4 years. So I lost my shirt.
Okay.
Yeah, one was Glee. One was a Nickelodeon show that we never got paid for, and one was
Nickelodeon didn't pay you?
Well, no. So they paid us most of it, but then the last week they didn't pay the final installment.
Got it.
And so I didn't get paid for that last week. And that's how I ended up with my little home shop that I have here, is because I was paid out in, when the shop folded. BJ's like, well, take that saw, take those puppets, take that foam. And that was kind of how I started my little shop, is that was all kind of just in payment of that last job.
Yeah.
And then he moved off to Atlanta. So and I still work with him. It's like I'm still his designer, which is great. Yeah, I mean, that's another one of those jobs you can do in the, as you're sitting there, moving commas around. You're like, oh, here's an idea for a rabbit head or whatever, So.
Which is awesome.
You've also worked. Now, this is, you're gonna have to explain this a little bit, because you said you've also worked as a puppet wrangler. Now, I don't know if that was. Well, please explain how that's different from being a puppeteer.
Okay. So there's kind of, I don't know how many, I want to say 4 tiers of puppetry, I guess. So there's the builder, they're in a class all their own. And then there's the performer.
Okay.
Okay. And
I'm
then
most
there's
familiar with.
yeah. So that would be like, okay, if you're doing Ernie from Sesame Street, you're working the head and the left hand as the performer. Okay.
And do the voice.
And do the voice.
Okay.
Somebody else built it. Got somebody who's doing the, okay. Then you have the assistant puppeteer, who's the right hand. Okay. So now that's the assistant. And then you have the wrangler, who basically is kind of like the makeup artist behind the camera that watches for lint and stitches that are out. And then between takes comes running up and stitches stuff up, or runs a lint roller on it, or a lint roller on it, or, you know, whatever, you know, finds that smudge and fixes it, or, you know, but also
That's
is watching
wild.
and is watching the monitor. And they're also kind of a second set of eyes for the technical end of things. So it's like, okay, the director's like, okay, that's a great take. And like, oh no, sorry, there was a piece of lint on Ernie's upper lip or whatever. So let's fix that and do it again. That's kind of what that is.
That's crazy. I have a question. This sparked something in me. Is Big Bird technically not a puppet because there's a person inside?
Right. So it is considered, I think it's called a costumed puppet. I think it's not a mascot. So like you go to Disneyland, that's a mascot. Okay. And then, or even if they're not as good as Disneyland, they're kind of a costume. It's kind of
right. I was just gonna say, because Big Bird's like a costume.
Yeah. So where Big Bird differs is he's got the hand that operates the head, and I'm off camera, but so that's the puppet part. And then I guess from the neck down would be the costume part, or it would be the puppet part, costume part. And I think it's kind of it was one of the first hybrid of the two. He's considered a puppet, but like all of those guys, I mean, even when they have an audio animatronic, it's kind of, let's consider an animatronic at that point. So like Where the Wild Things Are movie, I never saw it, but that was more animatronic because it was all mechanized, but I don't think it would be considered a puppet. So I don't know.
It's a good movie. I liked it.
Okay.
I love that book. But
I love the book too.
Mr. Snuffleupagus, Snuffy.
He'd be I don't know. I think
we could go down this. I could start.
There were definitely people inside of Snuffleupagus.
Yeah.
But is somebody with an arm down the snout?
What about Johnny Five? Remember from Short Circuit? Is
sure.
He a puppet? Is he a puppet? Is he animatronic? He's not a costume.
He's not CGI because that didn't exist yet.
I would call him a puppet because he is controlled by Puppeteer. Maybe that's what it is. Controlled by puppeteers off camera. And even though it's all mechanized, he's doing a performance based on the puppeteers. So I would think maybe that would be the definition.
We could be here.
I mean, I've got to defer to you as the expert.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, my resume sounds a lot better than it is because there's been some long stretches of just sitting there doing nothing. But
well, that is the artist's resume.
I was just gonna say, but that is the artist's resume. Yeah. That's also the mom's resume.
Well, I mean, I kind of feel like I haven't had a lot of opportunities. Like, I heard that. Was that your stomach again?
Yeah.
That might be my chair.
I'm drinking a whole heck of a lot of water. But I bring the jug and I don't like to drink out of the jug on camera. So I just hear.
Right. I never have had a lot of opportunities to be paid for my work, but I've found a lot of ways to make money at it, I guess. It's like, I self-published my books. I had a book that was published by a publisher, which sold okay, but didn't really do the business they were hoping for, And
you're finding more success in self-publishing.
No, I don't feel as guilty about dragging other people along with it, I think is kind of the thing. But it's like
you've always had as long as I've known you, you've always had a tremendous amount of guilt. It's like you were born in Michigan with me.
Right. Exactly.
You're my kin. But it's interesting because we're gonna blast the hell out of your book. Sorry, Steve's parents. We're gonna blast the hell
I think
out of your book. We're gonna put a link up so people can support and purchase because it really is fantastic. And I do feel like you are like a Mo Willems and a Dr. Seuss and more Mo Willems in in my personal opinion, which is great. And I do think that your tenacity will pay off. I do, I just think that people don't understand that it's not overnight success. It is years of putting in the work.
Well, I get a lot of it at different jobs I've had, well, you like to draw, so do this job, that sort of thing. They don't see it as
Yeah.
a separate skill.
But I do want to talk about one thing that you did. And I remember when you got this job, because it started as just a simple Halloween costume. And then all of a sudden you were playing Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
All of a sudden people
Yeah.
were like, oh, you can do this. We're going to pay you to be Charlie Chaplin. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that for a second. And what people did pay you to be Charlie Chaplin.
Well, doing for 4 years while I was a puppeteer, that was one of my little side gigs. Is I hooked up with this princess party that also did old Hollywood parties, and so there was a Marilyn Monroe, there was a Groucho, and then there was me as Charlie Chaplin. Now I had done Charlie Chaplin in college. In fact, me doing Charlie Chaplin directly ties into how I started doing puppetry to begin with. So I was doing a student film for one of my classes in college, and it was I was going to do a silent film of Charlie Chaplin. We had a 3-day shoot over a period of like 3 weeks, and we had shot 2 of the 3 days. I was Chaplin, and then before the 3rd day, the bully and the girl both dropped out of the project. Now, if you know a Charlie Chaplin movie, that's the 3 characters. So I was just me, and I didn't have an ending for the film. So Eric says, is there anything else? Same Eric Pertolsky, who I keep talking about. We've known each other since 8th grade, and we've always collaborated together, and
wow.
Yeah, off and on, or we compete with each other to the point where we both get better at whatever we're doing. But anyway, he says, is there anything, you got to finish this project? Is there any other, and I had 9 weeks off before it was due. And he goes, is there anything else you'd want to do? And I'm like, well, I have my comic Melon Pool. I would love to do animated feature movie of that, but there's no way I can do that. Let's do puppets. And that was the first time I'd ever done puppets, was building puppets for this student film in college.
Really?
You built Melon Pool for
built the original Melon Pool, which looked terrible. I mean, it was all, so I had bought the fabric when I was 12. So I'm 20. So 10 years earlier, I bought it at Remnant because I'm like, I want to build a puppet of my character, but I don't know how to do it. So here's the fabric. So it was sitting in my closet. I pulled it out that night. I got some foam and kind of carved the head, put it together, got the head done. And I thought, well, I don't know how to make the body. So I asked my grandmother, I said, and she's almost 80 at this point. And I say, is there any way you can sew a tube for the body so I can finish this film? She was like, I got a better idea than that. She lived right by my college. Come over to my house 3 days a week and we'll make these puppets. And so in 3 weeks, we built 4 puppets, and we built all 4 of the characters. I had earlier than in this story, but flashback to high school when I used to make Star Trek movies. So I had a 1/3 of the bridge of the Enterprise in my parents' garage.
Jesus.
Yeah, full scale. So that we could film our things. And so we filmed this sci-fi movie with these puppets on the old Star Trek set. And we had the original story, which was the same story as the first comic I had ever done, first published comic that I had done, was they're flying in space, they're watching TV, they don't see that they're about to crash into Earth, and then they crash land in the, in this, podunk town, and then are chased by hillbillies. And so there was a heritage park down the
I don't
street.
think you can say hillbilly anymore.
Sorry.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Redneck. These redneck. No, I was kidding.
Sorry. I just had to say it.
No, that's okay. You can bleep that out. No. I'm
kidding.
I'm basically alienating my entire audience by using the word no.
The hillbillies and rednecks will forgive you.
Yeah.
Thomas.
So there was this heritage park that we had gotten permission to film the Chaplin movie in Poway, where I grew up. And so we just basically moved the production there. And so the hillbilly town was now this heritage park. We used it as our back lot.
That's amazing.
We shot the whole thing in, like, I want to say it was 3 weeks to build the puppets. And then we shot over 12 days, almost continuously. And we got it done. We actually did the final dub of Eric did all the music on it too. And Andy puppeteered one of the characters. And he stayed up for 24 hours and finished all the music for it. And then we got stuck in traffic and we were late for the production. And I mean, for the film, we got in there just at the end. So we got it in there in time. But I got an A for it. It was great. And then we entered it into
I'd hope so.
we entered it in the Del Mar Fair. But I had done a movie a number of years earlier for the Del Mar Fair in the amateur division. And they this is how dumb I was when I was 22. So I had done this amateur thing, and the first prize was a ribbon. But I had seen at that point that you got $300 if you got first place in the professional division. So we entered this film into the professional division, and we got third place. We got $100 for that little film. Hey. And that was the beginning. And so then when the comic book came out, I had the puppets, so we would take them to the San Diego Comic-Con, and that was how that started. Was I had the puppets, so why not use them to bring people over? Yeah. And over the years, I would rebuild the puppets, and that was all the puppetry I did for about 10 years was just for those conventions and to promote my comics.
Well, so I definitely think people are going to want to watch the movie now.
Oh, it's up on YouTube. Okay, I'll send you a link to it.
Links to all of it.
Believe me, it's all the clarity that overdub VHS can do. You know, it's like we did one VHS to the other, and that was how we edited the whole thing. So
well, that was my next question. What did you shoot on?
We shot on VHS. I want to say we used the 2-hour speed. What was that? The LP as opposed to the SLP. So at least we did that. And the other thing was funny
because it's all about quality.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
In college, I was shooting on beta cams. I think like I permanently broke my back carrying. Oh
yeah.
But that is high quality. I mean,
it is high quality.
It was the first film we ever had that was that we had a dedicated cameraman. Usually it was a tripod that we would run behind and we would do.
You got a string tied to it to turn it from.
Yeah. Well, or we'd have whoever wasn't on set would be the cameraman for that. But we had a guy, Greg Skinner, who he looked like Harold Ramis from Ghostbusters. And he had all our sound equipment on his back. He had a backpack that had all the sound. We had 4 mics that came out of that sound pack that we were all mic'd to get our things. And then he had a boom mic that came off the back. And so we started calling him Egon. And to this day, he goes by Egon online. It's like
that's funny.
Yeah.
Wait, so hang on. He's got individual mics running to each of you, a boom mic coming out of his backpack. He's not holding any of these because his hands are on the camera.
Right.
This is like one of those one-man bands you see in the park.
And he wasn't on. Did I just go dead on the?
No,
you're good.
Okay. He didn't have so we had to plan every shot that we had outside because we had 300 feet of extension cord that he had to be attached to the wall because it was all AC. And so, we had to basically maneuver him, and we had to, once the puppeteers were all linked up, we couldn't get any farther than 16 feet from him because we're all wired up to him. Yeah. We had to make sure nobody would run in between to lodge. It was a crazy shoot.
And it doesn't sound like you had any PAs working for you.
No. So we had troubles getting enough of the townspeople. We had, our cast of thousands, which equated to 5 people. And two of them were the puppeteers because as they carried off the aliens, we just had them in there mixed in with the townspeople so they could work the puppets in the thing.
Gosh.
So yeah, but it was really fun. I mean, we did some crazy special effects and there's a couple of shots in there, even though none of us had ever done puppetry before. And I always said that Eric and his brother Roger were natural puppeteers. They were as good as I was 5 years after puppeteering because it took me just out of the box, putting it on. They're musicians, so they kind of understood the, performance. I was just some cartoonist that never put a puppet on his arm before.
So here you are now.
Yeah, and here's the one thing I want to take away, extrapolate from this story, is we were talking about Charlie Chaplin, and he he got you an A. He saved you a fail.
Yeah.
He inspired you as a muse. And
I had the costume.
And then when you were out of a job and just trying to make it as a puppeteer, he came back into your life.
Yeah.
And got his performance after all.
In fact, I got a call from them during the pandemic to see if I was available to do an appearance as Charlie Chaplin. I said, well, I did put on like 15 pounds during the pandemic. Let me see. Put it, because it's a super tight costume. I mean, so I put the thing on. I could just barely get it shut. And I'm like, I took a picture of myself and I said to her, would you take an Oliver Hardy? I never heard from her again. So
that's amazing. That is so funny.
Yeah.
So I know this
because you didn't have a Stan Laurel to go with you.
Yeah, that's what it was. Well, I could dress Tilly up. She's you could.
Well, you should have called Eric.
Yeah, Eric could have done it.
But I feel like I know this group because they do all the Disney princesses too, right?
Yeah.
Like we have a 7-year-old who's been to a lot of birthday parties, and there's always an Elsa or a.
They do like a Spider-Man. They do like the Marvel characters, and they really. I've done puppetry for them as well. Like they do this really cool thing in Pasadena every year, where they haven't done it for the last couple of years, but they showed like Babe and the Muppet movie, and then they brought me and a couple other puppeteers out there to work the crowd with puppets prior to the filming, and that was a lot of fun. I like that one.
But when you were Charlie Chaplin, did you speak at the parties?
That's the problem. I'm not really a mime. I can do some of the bits. I can do the walk. I can do the spin. I can do the cane spin. I can do. I have this bit where I can turn the hat and do. There's a lot of mannerisms I can do. But I'm not a mime, and everybody expects me to be a mime, and that's where I run into problems. And I tried speaking with an English accent, and that didn't really work. And I tried, different things like that. But I mean, it's a good photo op. That's all I'm there for, is to stand there with the backdrop and stand there, do it. Right. There was a guy who had a little mustache, so we were like pointing each other's mustaches and stuff. I mean, that was the sort of stuff I would do.
And did you get tipped?
Yeah, I'd make like $150 for the appearance, and then maybe $50 in tips. So
lovely.
That's great.
That's for a costume that I got when I was 20 years old, and still, still can fit into it. That's pretty good. So, and the great thing about Chaplin is because he's a tramp. The more beat up it gets, the more authentic it looks.
Yeah,
that's right. Never been to the dry cleaners.
In fact, during that movie that we were shooting before the Millpool movie, both arms ripped almost completely off. They're attached right at the front here, and then when I move my arms, you see the undershirt, and it's funny, right? And every time I wear, it's like, oh, you pulled a rip, you ripped a part of your coat. I was like, no, that's okay. It's this part of it. And I mean, that's the one thing I've noticed a lot. That, like, when I see Chaplin impersonators at like Universal or whatever, they're always so clean. It's like they're always just like, part of it was he was down on his luck.
right.
Die in corner or whatever. So
right.
I want to just thank you, Steve, for taking the time with us. We've taken up too much of your time, but thank you so much for sitting with us and sharing all of this with us, because you're amazing, dude.
Thank you.
And I want to say thank you so much for always being there for us. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
She showed on Monday, made love on Tuesday. By Wednesday she was down. We fought on Thursday, made up on Friday, but now I'm losing ground. You call me lazy, you think I'm crazy, so why'd you come around? She want my money, but I got no money. This ain't no savings and loans. crazy. So why'd you come around?